It will go live any minute now.
Okay.
So I'm just waiting for it to pop up on the page. There we go. So I'm just waiting for it to pop up on the page. There we go. I think we're working. Okay. So I'm just going to share this to a few groups. And if you can hear us, please. Okay.
Oh, I can see us. I think we are live.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm just sharing to a few groups and then waiting for some people to join. Pop it there. Pop it there. And pop it there. Great stuff. Yes, people. Oh, people are saying hello. They can hear us.
That's a relief.
We got there. It's always very awkward because there's no countdown and you just have to, it does it randomly, so we don't know. But yeah. So hi everyone. Welcome to our monthly Q&A at Autistic Parents UK, where every month we bring another autistic parent on or an expert or you know, somebody who's got a certain interest and we talk about things that are important and relevant to autistic parenting, really. And this week we've got Helen. This month even. God, can you tell that it's the end of like I'm on the slow decline to like being done for the year. But yeah, so this month we've got Helen Edgar, and I'm really excited because this is one of like my favorite subjects. But we get to talk about monotropism, which yeah, if you haven't heard of it, you're in for a treat. And if you have, you're in for a treat too. So yeah. Helen, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm Helen Edgar. I'm the founder of Autistic Realms. I'm late identified autistic ADHD. I'm a parent to two multiply neurodivergent children, autistic, ADHD, and a mixture of many other things going on in our family, as is often the case. My background is I worked as an early years primary teacher in special needs settings near Birmingham for around about 20 years. And yeah, and then my children had difficulties attending school, so I set up Autistic Realms, and
Here we are.
here we are. I found out all about the theory of monotropism, which completely changed my life, and I've dived in monotropically about monotropism ever since, really, which
Yeah.
follows my work. Yeah, you'll know a little bit about that.
Yeah. Monotropic about monotropism. So, for the people that don't know what monotropism is, I'm going to put you on what is monotropism, Helen?
So, yeah, so the theory of monotropism is we're both pronouncing it differently here, I'm aware
I
of
always
that.
say monotropism and
I
you
always say
it's
monotropism.
scone.
There we go. So yeah, the theory of monotropism was developed initially by a team of autistic people, Dinah Murray, Wen Lawson, and Mike Lesser, way back in the 1990s. It's not a particularly new theory, but it is a neuro-affirming theory of autism, which describes many autistic experiences and ways of being. Um, I also support the website monotropism.org, which has got everything about monotropism as well. If you want, I'll drop a link into the chat in a minute. But yeah,
Mhm.
so if you're monotropic, you'll tend to have your attention pulled more strongly towards a smaller number of interests at any given time, which leaves fewer resources than for everything else in life. So if you're monotropic and you resonate with that theory, for me, it explains every aspect of my life, the strengths and the
Mhm.
difficulties and the challenges, the burnouts, the joys, the glimmers, and everything in between, really, and how
Mhm.
my sensory system works. Yeah, but I think, yeah, you feel
Yeah,
free
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
expand on that, Tanya, a little bit more.
Yeah, so yeah, I think for me, what was really interesting about monotropism is when I was like, you know, finding out about my own neurology and my children's and doing the Google thing that you do, none of it really resonated with like what I was experiencing or what my children experienced. You know, I don't have an impaired theory of mind. I don't like, you know, I don't have all these pathologizing things. But actually, for me, like, oh, you can see my wallpaper. Sorry, interest led. But with monotropism, it kind of made sense to me because it, in a very, very simplistic way, it just explains how autistic attentional processing is different. And it just is. It's very direct. This is what it is. And people laud it a bit like double empathy for being like really non-pathologizing and positive, and it's not. It's just is,
It's
you know?
neutral, yeah. And I
It's
think
just, yeah, neutral.
it's neutral. And I think when some people think about the theory of monotropism, they think it's all about like being interested as in special interests, and it's not specifically just about special interests. It's anything that happens to be capturing your attention. So yeah, at the moment I've got a lovely glowing salt lamp next to me. So yeah, it can be anything where your mind or your sensory system
Like the
kind of just
wallpaper just
locks.
literally captured my attention just there. I was like,
Yeah,
oh. So yeah,
just
so
locks into
monotrop,
it. And it could be
yeah,
like negative thoughts as well, like
yeah,
it could be anything, I
anything.
think. Yeah.
So monotropism for me, because I'm a visual thinker, it just clicked with me at one point, which basically everybody has like a finite amount of attentional resources. Like we have, you could call it, you know, when you've got your computer and you're running it like max memory or whatever, when you've got too many tabs open, like everybody has that finite amount of attentional resources, but monotropic people think in detail and depth. So those attentional resources go deeper over fewer um
Channels.
yeah, over fewer channels. And because our attention goes deeper, it means switching our attention can be incredibly difficult because of the amount of momentum it takes to rip that depth of attention from one thing to another. Whereas alternatively, a polytropic person can scatter their attention very shallowly, if you like, over a number of different things, which makes hopping around and different subjects and small talk and all of that typical communication, which is watching, you know, tone of voice, body language, when it's their turn to talk, all of that stuff, um, that gives us neurotypicality, really. That and that ability to almost choose where your attention is going as well. Whereas we are interest led. Now, those interests don't necessarily mean the things like Helen said that gives us, you know, all of the fuzzies. And I want to be watching Egypt documentaries. That's what I do when I get burned out because I've kept that special interest since I was a child. And I'd love to be doing that 24/7, but it can be things that are occupying our mind. So it's whatever hooks our attention in, which for ADHD people like me can literally be like, oh, look, you can see my wallpaper. Or you know, or it could be something that's just reminded me or triggered me of a certain trauma because of particular PTSD. It could be anything, but the thing is, we are like water in that way. We have to flow in the direction that we go, and anything it's really difficult to try and direct that attention. We're a bit like a tsunami with the attention, aren't we? So we have to guide it gently rather than try and stop, break, and alter it. So yeah, I hope that helped. I think Kieran Rose actually did a really good YouTube
Yeah, he
video.
has. Yeah, I can have it. I can look that up. But yeah, I think as you were
Yeah.
saying, yeah, the difference between kind of monotropic kind of ways of being and thinking styles and polytropic, which is non-autistic ADHD styles, is yeah, polytropic people, non-autistic ADHD people are able to spread their attention more widely across more channels at once without it costing so much energy and resources, which makes communication easier, which is why I primarily find text-based communication a lot easier.
Mm.
And yeah, large social groups can be quite difficult to navigate.
Yeah, because you're constantly splitting your attention.
that attentional split, yeah, which
Mm.
you've written quite a lot about, Tanya, with the
Yeah,
monotropic.
do you know when I actually wrote about monotropic split and like honestly, I can remember I was sitting in your academy Zoom back in the day because we used to have like social groups and stuff. And I can remember being sat there. I think David was there and Dr. Chloe Farahar. And I went, you know that thing that that monotropic split type thing, where your attentional resources are just split over and over again, and it causes like that burnout and that like cognitive stress. And they were like, huh? I just thought everybody knew, and it was a complete
It just, yeah.
accident.
I remember, yeah, when you first shared it, and you were like, I just thought everybody knew about this, but it just made so much sense just
Yeah.
having that term, and it was something I'd felt, but I hadn't had the words to kind of,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it came from being a parent and experiencing what we then thought was like really severe postnatal depression, which was actually burnout from having my attention constantly pulled in different directions and trying to, you know, um, and also, I go to a lot of schools and see a lot of children that are in a lot of distress from like sensory trauma and again having their attention pulled in different directions, their sensory needs aren't being met, the demands that are unspoken and spoken, and all of that. And what happens with us is we don't when we're in an environment that demands an awful lot of our attention, especially things that where we have to mask to keep safe, the attentional resources that we put into each of those attention streams does not reduce because we can't control the amount of attentional, we can't control the depth of our thinking, the depth of our attention. Um, we're just pushing past what we can actually be capable of. And that means things like emotional regulation, sensory regulation, all of that stuff goes out the window because we're in survival mode, and masking plays such a huge part of that.
Yeah, I've written a little bit about kind of masking and monotropism, almost like a reallocation of kind of attentional resources in a way.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
and it's just exhausting and draining,
mm, mm.
having to do that.
But
I've
the
just
pos
dropped the
yeah,
link to Kieran's YouTube in the
yeah.
chat.
But the positive about understanding monotropism, though, is that it gave me an understanding as to why certain environments and certain things weren't good for me. And I think it also allowed me to understand the people that I worked with and my children and my friends and my family in a very different way that got rid of a lot of shame. Because it wasn't that I was bad at something or that they were bad at something, or we should just try harder to put in more scaffolding to make them less monotropic. It was they are monotropic in the same way a fish can't climb a tree, and that's it. And actually, I'm all about simplicity, and that tiny little kind of quite simple theory just basically was like, huh.
Yeah, it made my whole life kind of make sense, in a way that even perhaps like my initial autism kind of diagnosis, I
Yeah.
resonated with it, but when I found out about monotropism, it felt like it was explaining everything.
And it's so relevant to parenting.
Yeah. If people are interested in taking the monotropism questionnaire, I'll drop a link into the chat as well here. It's a free questionnaire. It is a monotropism questionnaire. It is not an autism assessment. um, but interestingly, with there's some research that's come out about the monotropism questionnaire by Garrow et al. In 2020. Was it 2023 now? That research,
You're
24?
nearly in
Forgotten.
2026, Helen.
I
We're
know.
getting like, oh, are we elder auties now? I think I'm like granddad, great granddad level autie now.
But yeah, what was interesting that came from that research was it was actually autistic and ADHD, so AuDHD is that scored the highest on the monotropism questionnaire,
That's
which
me and
I
you.
think that's us.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so feel free to take the questionnaire if it interests you. Uh,
Yeah.
I'd also be really curious as to know what a child, young person's monotropism questionnaire might look like. There isn't one
Yeah,
developed yet, but
yeah,
that'd be
yeah.
quite interesting, and I think it'd be
It
really
would,
valuable.
wouldn't it? I wonder, has anybody watching heard of monotropism or taken it or the questionnaire or kind of like resonated with it? Because there is that misconception that it's all about like not being able to ever shift your attention and stuff. And sometimes we experience that, don't get me wrong. But equally, it can be about not being able to sustain your attention because there's something more hooky and more interesting happening. I don't know. Have you ever sat at a desk and stared at a screen for 30 minutes because you've got to fill out a form and you just can't, you know? But yeah, so where do you think we're going with monotropism then? Because here we go. What's Rachel saying? It feels like it's impossible to be a parent without multitasking. Yeah, 100%. And um I know that when I do a lot of training and hopefully this is something we're looking to kind of bring into the AP UK. Bex is just about to take the questionnaire. Oh, you'll have to let us know the results, Bex. But yeah, I know that when social care, when we get a lot of referrals, when, you know, whenever we're like parenting is so hard anyway. And the thing is, parenting, I don't think was ever supposed to be done without a robust support network. Um, but where we are in terms of like the political climate and people having to work and, favoring resources and so on and so forth. I mean, I think that life has changed so much, even my generation, for
I
example, like
know
when
that when
I
I
do a lot of training and
oh,
hopefully this is something we're
hello.
looking to kind of
Sorry, I accidentally clicked. I've got another
That's
screen
all
open.
right.
Sorry.
See, look, she's off again. But I know that when like I was doing like when I was growing up, we'd spend time at like grandma's, aunties, the next door neighbors, all places like that. So it literally was taking a village to raise a child. And I think because of like the way that we need to work and the way that things are going, like there is a lot more pressure on parents now to do it all themselves, aren't there? And this is kind of like neoliberal attitude towards parenting that if you need any kind of support, then you're a drain on society or resources, and everything should be like your own kind of responsibility. And I think that's just really made it a lot harder for autistic parents specifically. Because in some cultures, I know that it's quite normal for families to live together in the same house for generations and, for like mums to move in with their daughters, for example, if they have their children when they have their children for so many months. Um and we just don't really have that kind of shared community anymore where you can do that strength-based work in terms of parenting. And I think that that's probably not a big stretch to say why we're seeing a lot of like mental health challenges for parents as well.
Because yeah, we're exhausted. We're burnt, but you got like burnt out parents with children that are also struggling often in our school systems as well. And yeah, it can be really hard. Somebody's just put in the chat that they don't know about like strategies around it, and I think one of it's hard. I think, but I think there is some hope, Tanya, and I think certainly for me and lots of families that I've kind of spoken to, generally that low demand parenting approach can be really, really beneficial,
Mm.
and kind of being aware of those neuronormative expectations that we're often kind of held up
Mm.
against, and having to kind of reframe things, reframe the way
Yeah, so
your own
strategy and
expectations.
this is the thing because there's so much shame wrapped up, especially in being a late identified autistic person as well. Um that when you see things, you're like, right, okay, now I need to make a strategy around it. And actually, sometimes it's about shifting that perspective and working with it, you know. Now there are going to be things, and I think me and you talked about this because we've done we did a presentation on monotropism for the National Autistic Society Education Conference together.
Mhm.
And what we kind of said in there, we were talking about, bringing neuro-affirming theory into schools and basically looking at how we're interacting and teaching our young people and stuff. And, you know,
How beneficial the theory of monotropism could be for educators to
yeah,
understand.
because if you're looking at things through that lens, then you become neuro-affirming. So it may not necessarily be about living this completely demand-free neuro-affirming life. That's not always possible. We have to make sure that our kids are clean, fed, healthy. We have to have boundaries with ourselves. We have to have those things, but it's more sometimes about finding glimmers of hope or islands of safety, or as Kieran would put it, or like, it's pockets of flow, I think we called it, wasn't it?
Yeah, pockets of flow, yeah.
So
And also your
scheduling downtime
yeah, and
for
your
flow.
lily padding idea of kind of those
Yeah,
little shifts and moments and little bridges you can add into.
yeah. And that's why I wrote about lily padding really, because again, I'm a visual thinker. So I was like, right, okay, how do I live authentically? How do I communicate with the people that I support or assess? How do we, you know, um interact with somebody in crisis, for example, because of a lot of mental health crisis work. And actually, I was like, right, how do you just kind of explain something that you instinctively do for your family, for your work, for yourself? And actually, lily padding is kind of it. So it's about, and a little bit of mindfulness as well. I think it's about not sweating the small stuff, figuring out what's non-negotiable and not, you know, and also noticing what's driving you to think that you have to do something. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of shoulds. We should be doing this. We should be going out to all the after school clubs. We should be at soft play 3 times a week. We should be able to do this and we should be able to do that. And I think like one of my therapists once said to me, like, should is just could, but with shame attached to it. So I think for me, a big thing has been recognizing where a lot of those expectations come from, where it's internalized shame and ableism from me, rather than that's coming from neuronormative expectations or expectations of how I was parented and things like that, because that shapes a lot of your parenting. Um, and the unknown for autistic parents as well can sometimes be quite daunting. So we stick sometimes to rigid things in our heads of how they have to be, and it's not necessarily like that. And I think it's just giving yourself permission to just like have a few moments occasionally.
Yeah, and I think what I really liked about the lily padding idea, which relates to monotropism, is that idea of understanding just how much energy it takes to kind of shift attention and to manage all those transitions through the day. And if we're thinking of us as parents and trying to support our children through all of their transitions, so it's like layered transitions for a family, isn't it? It's multiple transitions that we're trying to do. Um,
And it's
and
understanding what transitions are. We take for granted, it's a bit like, I don't know about you, Helen, but how many times have you heard an autistic person, myself included, because I'm hypermobile, going, I didn't actually realize that feeling that I had every day was actually pain. Like I didn't actually realize what was stressing me out and frying my nerves and like making me really dysregulated every day was a transition, because it's just getting up, getting dressed and taking the kids to school. Of course it's a transition. That we have
it's never
so
just.
many
It's that
micro
word
trans
just again, isn't it?
yeah,
Like
oh, I
just
hate a
getting
just.
up and just going to school, like even having a shower and brushing teeth, whether it's your own or your
Massive
children.
sensory transitions. Like, so give yourself a pat on the back for doing that stuff. Let's like honor it for what it is.
Yeah, and I think when
Um,
you were talking about the theory of monotropism essentially being about, understanding that we've all got that finite amount of energy. So those transitions and those sensory experiences take up energy, like literally. I do a lot of workshops.
mm,
I often use like a kind of jug theory, where it's literally taking up maybe that much energy before we've even left the house. Whereas, if a person's not autistic or ADHD and maybe not monotropic, they might have a lot more energy to kind of
Mm.
start their day at school, really.
Yeah, yeah. But also, equally, on the flip side, because I'm ADHD, sometimes I need extra simulation to remain monotropically focused as well. There's a brain twister. But yeah, do you want to explain a bit about that as well, Helen?
About your meerkatting.
No,
Your
no, no,
meerkat.
no. Just like how it doesn't necessarily mean that you are just going to be in one thing and not be flitting your attention. It's
Yeah, and I
about
think
flow.
it's about flow, isn't it? And yeah, my flow is all connected. It's very
It's a
constellation-y.
so
So I go down
monotropic,
a tunnel and then
yeah.
I'm suddenly like all of
It's
my
like a
thoughts are
tree. It's
interconnected.
like a tree with little branches, and you're like a little squirrel that's just, oh look, squirrel. But it's about flow and it's about being in that flow state. And if one kind of stream of thought leaves gently where it veers like a river into another and joins with something else and so on and so forth, then that's and you're maintaining momentum, you're maintaining that steady speed of flow, of thought, of movement. You're not being asked to shift speeds and shift gears. Um, and that's where a lot of people can go, do you know what? Actually, I don't kind of like associate myself with monotropism because it's all about, being into trains or planes or cars or special interests and not being able to move and doing. No, it's absolutely not that. It's more about being in this natural kind of flow state of thinking, of thought, at a speed which allows you to take in the information at the rate that your neurology does.
And
And
not just cognitive information, we're talking,
no
yeah,
sensory
sensory.
information, even the stuff that you don't even know that you're doing, but also then be cooked in by associative thinking, you
Yeah,
know?
that constellation part, like my hands keep going
Yeah.
like that because it's
I
just all,
always
all
think, see, I
connected.
always see it as a massive like tree with like lots of different branches
Yeah.
and veins and, all the way from the roots up to like,
Like on my board
yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah, trees, water, all the nature analogies. Can you tell we're both visual thinkers? I hope there's no, oh, what's the thing when you don't think visually? Yeah,
Aphantasia.
aphantasic people here because listening to us, they'd be like, "Oh no, I don't know what you mean." Sorry if you are. Sorry in advance. But yeah, somebody's just said, maybe that's why we prefer to stick to routines. If we have a set way of doing things, then that's one less thing we have to focus our attention in. That's exactly it. That is exactly it. So that's for me, when I'm trying to explain like same foods and stuff, I explain that I have a preset for those foods. There is nothing surprising. There is nothing new. There is nothing that is going to take up an attentional resource in the here and now because that's kind of in the long term already. So it's not a tax on my attentional resources. That's why I tend to stick to routines because then if it's a routine that's a well-trodden path for me, then it doesn't take much more energy because I can do it without thinking about it, without having to apply depth of thought to that, and then get overwhelmed and then not know where I'm starting.
Yeah, I think the difference is with us as parents with routines that we've got that autonomy generally over our own routines, whereas um, some people, I think, especially in kind of school settings, I think, oh, if your child's autistic, they're going to need like this really rigid timetable. They're going to need like really set routines, and at 10 o'clock they've got to go here, and at 11:15 they need to be doing this, and they have it all kind of set out with all those visual timetables. And for some children that works, but also for a lot of children, it doesn't work, especially if they've had no input on it.
I wonder
They've
if
had
it really does work for some children or
Or
whether it's
maybe
just
they're just
conditioning.
complying and they're masking and kind of
That's
falling
what I
into
mean. Like, I
complying.
wonder if it does work for some children. I wonder if it's like conditioned because
I
that's the
think
thing
if
that we
perhaps if
do.
they've yeah, perhaps if they've had some input, so they've got some kind of agency or autonomy of how that timetable looks, and they say, right, this is what I want to do today, and I really would like to stick to this,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
that's different, isn't it?
And
As opposed to somebody
also,
knowing this is what you're doing.
curveball, front loading, right? So if we have our routines and our same foods and things, then we know that we might actually have the free time for the flow state, the free energy for the flow state to do with what we want. And quite often, I don't know about you, Helen, but I can front load stuff. so because I think we're always, and that's another thing about monotropism as well, or see, I'm talking like you now. Monotropism is that because of those finite of attentional resources, whether we're aware that's what's happening or not, we are always either consciously or unconsciously energy accounting or attentional resource accounting, right? And this can be a lot of the time when we don't know this stuff about ourselves. That's why it can be really anxiety inducing, not knowing what's coming next, because we're not aware that we're energy accounting or why we're energy accounting, especially when we're kids. So I think understanding monotropism, like as a family and as a child in an age appropriate way, can like really help you kind of have that language and just that kind of confidence where you're going, do you know what? My brain is not going to like that many transitions. I'm not going to have the energy to do that. Because actually, it must be incredibly frightening when you're surrounded by a lot. Well, I know it is because I've been there. When you're surrounded by a lot of neurotypical kids and they're finding all this stuff so easy and it's really hard for you. And all you can feel is more and more dysregulated and you don't know why that is. And even as a new parent, if you don't know, or even as an old parent, you do know it's still quite, but at least you have something then. You have a tool in your toolbox to go, okay, I have that knowledge about myself. I know what I need. I know how to advocate and ask for what I want. And I find that really frustrating that quite more often than not, we're asking disabled people and specifically children, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? And expecting them to have an answer when actually a lot of professionals don't even know an awful lot about autism. So yeah, that's my
Yeah.
rant.
No, I think energy accounting and the theory of monotropism is very kind of interconnected.
Interlinked. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and I think things like I mean, there's lots of different kind of energy accounting theories, but I think spoon theory is really useful to
You've
use.
got, yeah, there's spoon theory, there's the jug, there's like Jodie Clark's mobile phone analogy, whatever works for you.
The
I know
battery.
that David in mentoring uses a health bar, like you get on your little I'm so not down with the kids, but when you like games and stuff where you have like a health
Oh,
bar.
okay. Yeah, I'm not into
Yeah.
gaming either. I don't know about that. But
I'm
yeah,
I'm
I'm
not a
into
cool
spoon
mum,
theory.
sorry.
I like the battery, the phone battery thing, the jug analogy. And those can be 'cause somebody wrote in the chat about strategies, and depending on your children and whether they're interested in all of this, that can be something you can discuss and use as a family and talk about your spoons and your energy levels and what's
Mhm.
manageable for you as a family. Literally, you can get spoons out your cutlery drawer if you've
Yeah,
got spoons left in
yeah.
there. Ours are always going missing.
And also time as well. Like everybody finds this really fascinating when I say this, but again, I thought everybody knew. Like the reason we struggle with the concept of time is because our most precious resource is not time, it's energy. Um, and when you understand things like monotropism and energy accounting, that makes sense. So we have time blindness and we think that something that we know lots about, we'd be able to write 5,000 words on in 10 minutes. But actually something that we know nothing about, we wouldn't be able to write 500 words on in 5 hours, you know? And that's because we don't tend to think in time as a primary kind of precious commodity. It tends to be about our attentional resources and our energy reserves. And we can see that by being in wait mode for appointments as well.
Well,
So
yeah, we were
difficult.
both in wait mode very early for
Yeah.
like we both have the same wait mode thing. But I think yeah, I've written quite a lot about autistic perception of time this year, if people want to
Have
like look
you?
at that. I
I
have.
can never keep up with how much stuff you write, Helen. I'm like, oh my Lord.
Um, so yeah, if people want to look into that. But I'm quite interested in the theory from there's a philosopher called Bergson from a long time ago. But they wrote about time as being a felt experience as opposed to something kind of linear and chronological. And
Mm,
that's very much how I experience time. I really struggle with time on the clock and
mm.
calendars. I'm able to do that. I've got things I'm able to like
But
keep
only
myself.
if you've got
But
it
but if
within your attentional
yeah,
focus and you're constantly like, what time is it? What time is it? What time is it? And then you can't be
yeah.
present.
But literally when I'm kind of down that monotropic rabbit hole of my autistic joy, like researching into monotropism and autism related stuff, then literally, yeah, half an hour it can feel like half an hour, but actually it's going dark outside and maybe 5 hours have passed, and I might not have had a drink, I might not have moved position, all of my interoceptive kind of awareness just is
It falls
struggling.
off
It's
the
yeah, completely out the radar, like it's not even in my attention tunnel because I'm so deep down. And I think it's really interesting to think about, yeah, time
yeah.
perception, but also how it affects your interoception.
Yeah, so I think I wrote about this in Meerkat Mode, but interoception is, does anybody not know what interoception is? Maybe we should explain what that is. So interoception is one of your 8 senses. And as we know, autistic people have sensory differences, but interoception talks about a range of internal senses, basically. So things like hunger, thirst, pain, temperature regulation, any kind of
Tiredness,
yeah,
toileting, all of those.
emotions even, because emotions come from interpreting, that's not even a word. Interpreting is now a word. Interpreting our internal body signals, which we then interpret as a specific emotion, and we assign an emotion to it. An interoception can be really, really difficult for autistic people. A lot of autistic people are alexithymic, and we can be hyper or hypersensitive. We can be a mixture of both in different areas and different times. But what I have seen a lot of in my practice is that, when we are very stressed, very busy, very hypervigilant, very monotropically focused, very attentionally split, experiencing monotropic split, is that our sensory regulation stuff really falls off a cliff, and interoception is one of the first things to be impacted. I don't know about you, Helen.
Yeah, as I said, like, yeah, when I'm down that kind of rabbit hole and deep in my tunnel, then yeah, I forget to drink. I have to have like reminders on my phone. And yeah, I'm sat here maybe after a few hours and I realize I've got pins and needles when I try and stand up because I just haven't been aware of it. And yeah, I think for, yeah, us as adults, it's significant. And also it's can be quite significant for a lot of our young people and children as well.
Mhm.
And
And
understanding that
also,
can really help. Yeah,
and
with
it's also, like interoception is something that you can, interoception is a nature and nurture thing. It's something that you can exercise and practice. I'm a massive advocate for therapy for that reason. It's interoceptive work.
yeah, Kelly
With
Marler's
the
done
right with the
fabulous
right
work.
therapist.
Yeah, Kelly Marler's done particularly amazing. There's lots of other therapists out there, but she's
Yeah,
really doing
Kelly Marler is
work.
the interception queen. We've done a few bits with Kelly. She's been great. But yeah, alexithymia as well. Um, Interception is such, because I think for us, we have to work like mindfully to keep the things that we need within our attentional resources. That's why we have to manage our environment so much. Um, the golden equation is something that we kind of live by in my house and in my work and with my friends and family, which is autism plus environment equals outcome. So you can't change the autistic person, you can't change the outcome because that's the result of the formula. So the only thing that you can change is the environment. And I guess that's when we talk about kind of, you know, managing that environment, why that's so important. Because when we talk about strategies and strategizing, ultimately trying to change ourselves when we are monotropic people and trying to change the way that our attention is distributed it's pointless. It's not going to happen. It's just going to lead to monotropic split, stress, more shame, and feeling like a failure. So actually, when we're thinking about those strategies in a neuro-affirming way, we need to be looking through an environmental lens first. And that is also, it's not just the physical environment, it's the demands, the attitudes of the people around us, how we organize in our time so for example, right, 2 days a week, I prefer to do what we'd call compressed hours. So I prefer to front load my entire week. So I will work 12 to 14 hours a day, 2 days a week, so that I can then have a lot more flow time for the rest of the week.
Yeah, that's kind of how I previously worked as well.
Yeah,
I just
but it
get
works
into
for
that flow
me.
state, and then
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then I
Works
go
for
into
me.
another. Then I have to try and transition to another topic or job or something like that. But yeah, I have to kind of time block it like that.
Yeah.
So it's people are writing in the chat here
Yeah,
telling
I'm just looking at it now. What's
me
Beck saying?
that
Definitely one of the biggest difficulties with being a parent is monotropic split. Constant monotropic split from our environment and complete lack of monotropic flow. As Tanya said, it's impossible for most to get the support and help like our ancestors would have. You could argue that's a human need, especially monotropic humans. Yeah. Um,
I
and
think
one of
it's hard
I
because as
it's
parents,
so hard as
we're having
parents.
you have to see to your children. Like if your children, it's like it's, when they're younger, you have to change. If the nappy needs change, the nappy needs change. If they need feeding, they need feeding. If they're tired, there's certain things that you have to be able to
Yeah, and the
tend
younger
to.
years are the hardest.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I swear that parenting monotropic split is almost a physical feeling for me. It's like having something plugged into the back of your head constantly pulling
Yeah,
you.
I physically I feel it in my
Feel,
body.
feel it. I
I
feel it in my,
actually,
yeah. It's almost like being plugged into the Matrix. That's what it feels like. But um I mean,
I think
yeah,
that's
and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
finding that flow, like we talked about routines, you know. I remember because obviously I'm the eldest, oh, not obviously you wouldn't know that, but I'm like the oldest daughter, niece. Like this explains a lot about my personality. I'm like the oldest daughter, niece, grandchild on both sides. Um, and I've got a really little sister who's like the youngest and she's autistic and ADHD, and she was gonna have a when she had her first baby. And I remember saying like the biggest, it's like drop any expectation and just spend that time finding your flow together. Like don't try and impose routines, you know, just flow together and see, and it will just work out that you get into a kind of rhythm with each other, and that's what you have to do. And I think sometimes when we've masked so long, we put so much pressure on ourselves to be perfect and how things should be that we forget to step back sometimes and go, right, okay, is everybody's needs met? Is everybody happy? Why am I looking for things that I'm bad at? Are we okay? Do you know what I mean? And we forget to kind of give ourselves the praise that we deserve sometimes because we're always in that masking that we need to be more, we need to do more, and we don't. But it's really
And I think, as you said, for a lot of people, if they're late identified autistic as well, it's really hard kind of unpacking all of that and those expectations of how you think
I
families
mean,
should be and what you should be doing as a
I
parent.
can't speak for a
Yeah.
neurotypical parent because I've never bloody been one. Um, but I think, and I'm going to hazard a guess that having children means reparenting yourself to some degree as well, because parenting practices change. And I don't think, I think whatever we do as parents, we screw our children up in one way or another, don't we? You know? Not intentionally, not saying that people are bad parents, but you know, we all struggle in childhood in some kind of way. Um, and I think being a parent is challenging anyway because it makes you face things that you might not have realized that you needed to face and unpack, you know, and
Yeah.
then add in,
Something you can't prepare for, isn't it? It's like no,
yeah,
nobody can prepare for a
nobody can
parenting.
warn you like the
Yeah.
emotional impact of like all of your traumas and all of the things that you thought were you were dealt with are just about to stare you straight in the face in the form of a little person.
But at the same time, like just putting a positive spin on it, I think the more we understand and learn about kind of ourselves as
Oh,
autistic
absolutely. I
people,
mean, honestly, you'd listen to me and you'd be like, why would you ever have children? But honestly, no, I
I
like
think
that
it can.
stuff.
It's definitely helped me, and it's helped me
Yeah.
reframe some of those difficulties.
But you have no choice but to face it and let go of it, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And I wish I'd
that's
have known
something
earlier, to be honest. Yeah,
that's something that I needed, you know?
yeah.
Um, like I needed to be able to, because if it wasn't for my children, I'd never know that these
I
things
didn't, well, I
needed
didn't
to
know I was
be.
autistic until much later. And like looking back on like the early years, I couldn't work out why it was so hard. Like I'd been in like an
Like,
early
what
years team
is
for so
wrong
many
with
years. It's like,
me?
this is so hard. I used to go into school and I was just like, I know like we're all tired here, but like I'm really, really tired. This is really, really hard. And yeah, and then suddenly
Yeah.
things began to make sense. And I don't think parenting for anybody is particularly easy, but I think the more you understand about
And
yourself
it's
and
the
your
way we do parenting as well, and
yeah,
the neuronormative expectations as well. And also, I think that, you know, autistic parents are often accused of being really anxious and mum's anxiety and parent blame and things like that. But more often than not, what's missed, whether you are identified, diagnosed, or you haven't got a clue that you're autistic, is instinctively when an autistic parent has an autistic child, they know what's waiting for them. So, yes, they're going to be anxious.
yeah,
That's
so
a completely logical outcome. And neuronormative professionals do not understand that. They just read it as kind of like parental anxiety.
yeah, somebody's just written in the chat that those early years of being a new parent is so difficult because that's when a lot of us are going through that process of getting their child assessed and then discovering that they're autistic too. Um, and yeah,
Mm.
it's all of yeah, it's what led down that path. And as you said,
But it's necessary, isn't it? I don't think I would want to go back to not knowing or
no, no, definitely
understanding.
not. No, it's been very validating for me, in many
Yeah.
ways, definitely.
And it all, so what do you think's next for kind of like monotropism then? What's next, do we think? Because
Well, research is just expanding out. So, yeah, so I support Fergus Murray, the son of Dynamo, who first conceptualized monotropism, um, with the other researchers and with monotropism.org. So it's a really long sentence. Um, so I'm collating and helping them collate like all the research that's kind of coming out, and it's expanding into so many different areas now. So there's stuff coming out about monotropism kind of informed medical care. Mary Doherty has done a lot of work, is an autistic doctor. It's something called the Autistic Space Program, which is really neuro-affirming, and it kind of honours the theory of monotropism as well. There's monotropism in music theory that's coming out. It's just reaching out into so many different spaces beyond education, beyond kind of yeah, it's just expanding out, I guess. And also, there's a lot of work theory and research around monotropism and the impact on burnout, specifically in mental health, which is really, really significant and really important, I think, to kind of look at and address and understand better.
like we all know that, but it's
We
time it
do,
went
but
into research.
it's nice to have that evidence-based research as
Mhm.
well, and yeah, promoting community discussions like this, because when you've got like that other research to kind of back it up, it does help as well.
Well, research is what gets it into mainstream, isn't it, really? And
Yeah.
we're a long way from that, but at least we have the information to share amongst each others and we are making progress. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. What
I
do you
mean,
think would be the next step then, Tanya?
I think it would be getting it into sort of mainstream training and understanding of autistic experience, maybe even reflecting it in a diagnostic criteria. I think that would be the next step potentially. Because actually a lot of support for autistic people is built around how to make them more neurotypical and meet that neurotypical benchmark, which we know doesn't
Just
exist
kind of
anyway.
yeah, instead of embracing kind of autistic people's natural identity
Yeah,
in
and
monotropic
actually
ways.
we talk about strengths-based working and all this, that, and the other, but actually I think as a society we are missing out on so much talent and innovation.
It's hard,
Um,
isn't it, adding it into the diagnostic criteria because that would almost pathologizes it again as something to
it
like
does and it doesn't, but the
yeah.
thing is, I think that, when we look at, see, we've always had this like medical model versus social model thing, but I think it can be married up if we start viewing the body mind as an environment. And
That would be
actually
quite radical for the DSM.
it would be quite radical, but it doesn't have to, but actually if we start looking at these fixed and repetitive interests more new through a neuro-affirming lens, it will naturally become that monotropism will feature within the diagnostic criteria, I think. Because how can you look at fixed and repetitive interests and communication differences, switch it to be neuro-affirming and it not be monotropic?
Yeah.
It
So
just is.
there's some really good neuro-affirming handbooks for autism assessments and stuff that's come out. Just
Oh yeah, via
by Vida Hartman and
yeah.
Tara Killen from Thriving Autistic as well, and their team. So
And actually, I think we should be thinking about the impact, because we should be like, obviously we know the problem with medicalization and blah blah blah, and where it does have point and where it doesn't, and we've got that whole argument, but actually, is that really the first thing that you want to be reading about yourself? You know?
yeah,
Um,
I'm just reading the chat here, Tanya, and
yeah,
somebody's written, so is there a way to parent monotropically, or is it about finding ways to recover child-free from the unavoidable monotropic split?
both.
Yeah,
Both things can be true. I think it depends on your child, but you can find pockets of flow together to co-regulate together. Like me and my son colour in dinosaur pictures, and we both sit there parallel playing with each other, and what colours we're gonna.
I think it's
Um,
using those kind of the autistic love languages, the
it's
neurodivergent
getting
love
into the
languages. It's
rhythms with your
things like
child.
parallel play and body doubling and
One thing that I will be honest about though, it's really difficult when you've been really burned out and not aware of your own interoceptional regulation levels, that if you're a meerkat mode, it is very, very difficult to get into a flow state with your kids because you're constantly in hypervigilant mode. And when you're in hypervigilant mode, it's really difficult to co-regulate and bring that down and not sweat the small stuff. Um,
did you want to expand a little? We're kind of
you can do it, Helen,
I can do
actually.
it.
I was
Okay.
gonna let go. Over to you, Helen, because I know you really liked that, didn't you? You really liked meerkat mode.
Yeah, so makeup is Tanya's concept, and it's literally being like a meerkat, like on high alert all the time and seeking. So specifically, it's especially relevant for AuDHDs, potentially, I think. So you're constantly seeking that flow state, and in multiple ways, perhaps, and never feeling quite settled. I think it links really closely to that burnout cycle.
Yeah, it links really closely for me to being at the edge of your resources. It to losing the interoception, to needing to keep yourself almost in a hyper aroused state to keep going.
So
So
it can
it's
look like constantly working.
yeah, it can also look manic, but
Yeah.
it's particularly pertinent for parents, that have to do it, that can't stop, that can't relax. But the thing is, more often than not, that when you are in that mode, you don't necessarily realize it yourself. Because, we know that when we're experiencing things that are traumatic or stressful, our interoception does shut down somewhat. Like we know that to be true. So not applying that to a burned out autistic person, why are we not doing that? I mean, all that it basically the research is there, it just needs linking together. But yeah, and it can be really difficult because especially if you have trauma as well. So if you've experienced trauma, and find me an autistic person that hasn't experienced trauma, growing up in existing in a world that expects things from you that your brain and body mind is just not designed to do is inherently traumatic. And then there's all the layered gendered expectations and work expectation, everything. Um,
Even the expectations of rest, like when we're talking about kind of meerkat mode and burnout and all the demands of parenting, especially if you're potentially by yourself or with your children all day, and you've also got maybe juggling work and multiple demands and from all
and if you felt
directions.
unsafe for a long time, it's almost like your body will not allow you to be in flow state because it doesn't feel safe to be.
Yeah, it's that
Um,
that constant seeking. And I think there's certain expectations around even when we are burnt out, what our rest should be like. And I think if you're
Oh,
autistic,
rest does not involve me sitting in bed. So I'll tell you a story, right? I work a lot from my bed because it's my comfiest place to be. And that means that sensory wise, because I'm hypermobile, I don't have to think about being uncomfortable sat in a chair. But that's not rest for me. Rest for me is doing things like engaging with my interests or deciding what to do next or,
Yeah,
doing
but
a little
rest
deep
for me is
dive.
like, yeah, being on my website and like writing reams and reams of blogs and stuff like that. Rest for me is not necessarily, yeah, going out for a
It's having a
meal
brain
with,
break. It's engaging
yeah,
in your interests. It's
yeah.
following. And this is what I mean by finding
It's
those
that flow.
pockets.
Yeah, the
You
pockets of
have
flow.
to
Yeah.
practice finding pockets of flow. And you almost have to practice letting go of shame of should be doing this, should be doing that when we're having that active rest time. And it's really hard. And I still struggle with it. Like, because the negative thoughts do creep in, don't they? Like, we live in an ableist society. Of course, we have, like, we hold on to like systemic ableism. But like, when I front load things and I leave myself free time to do, like the instant kind of urges to, I should be doing this, or I should be doing that, or I need to get this for the kids, or I need to clean the house, or why don't we decorate? Do you know what I mean? In actual fact, is that shame talking and masking and all of that stuff, or is that what my interest is? So it's about really being able to reflect, I think, as well. And that's really hard, but learning to give yourself space and grace is really difficult.
Yeah, but it can help. And I'm just having a little look at the chat back here again. Somebody's
Yeah.
kind of looped back to a previous conversation, I think, and they said, would monotropism help explain why, as an autistic person, they find it easy and pleasurable to have that deep chat with one person, and why groups are really, really stressful? And yeah, I
Yeah,
think yes, it does, 100%. Because it's that
100%.
splitting of attention that we're talking about. If you're with one person, you can kind of focus and
Deep
go
dive.
deep dive, and if
Yeah.
you're having to
And
be
when you
deep,
get in the same flow, I think there is something co-regulatory about it. Like, because like
and
we're both
energizing, yeah, it
yeah, yeah.
replenishes those spoons almost, yeah.
Yeah, like me, you and David, for example, we work to together quite often and we will like very AuDHD, like I'm really bad at talking over people anyway and just be like, blah, because that's just me. But thoughts will bounce like pinballs between us all and associative
Because
thinking.
we're all so similar, like we're literally like
Bah,
like a
bah, bah, bah.
pinball
And then
machine.
I'm usually the one going, we need order, we need order. But no, like it can read to an observer as chaos. But actually, I think what happens there is that we
We're in
come
a
into the
shared flow
same
state,
we're in a shared
essentially.
flow state, so we're going at the same speed with this on the same track with the similar associative thoughts. So because we're in that with depth, it's quite easy to know where those associations are going to go and build on that. But I imagine it probably
If
looks like
somebody
watch.
somebody listened to our conversations from the outside, they
Yeah,
would
it
be
would be
looking
like
at that.
watching a bag of cats or something. Um,
Yeah.
And I think as well, like because we know each other as well, like a lot of the nice neurotypical niceties go with the communication and we just say no or yes and it would probably look quite aggressive as well to most people sometimes because like, we don't do
Possibly
the
blunter, isn't it? I think we're
yeah,
just, yeah,
blunter and
focused.
yeah, and focused and like boom, because I think communication for us is literally about exchanging information and ideas and weighing things up, whereas communication for neurotypical people can be about how we are perceived and presented. And that's why we mask, because we have to kick into a masking gear to then add that layer of how we're perceived and presented, which just doesn't work for monotropic deep thinkers. Because if I'm watching my tone of voice and being polite and remembering not to speak over people and then remembering to ask about your father and what's your name and what's that smell, like I'm also not watching what my facial expressions are doing or, thinking about, oh my God, have I talked too long? You know?
So, yeah, there is just one more. I know it's 8 o'clock now. Somebody has
Yeah,
just made
yeah,
a
yeah.
really interesting comment in the chat though, and they've said that yeah, if they're hyper focused on their child, um, sorry, they're hyper focused on their child rather than the activity that they're doing, and then falling into that flow state, they say feels almost dangerous because they're not going to be like alert enough. So that's an interesting kind of splitting of attention as well there. I thought that was quite an interesting.
Yeah. And actually, worrying about not being alert enough to what? Where's the danger? And I think again that comes from having to be in a hyper aroused state for a long time and masking, which we know that, well, we think we know that assigned female at birth people do more, but honestly, I just think we're probably just doing a huge disservice to a lot of people that weren't assigned female at birth as well. Um, but yeah, there's a lot tied into that hypervigilance and masking, and that's that underlying sense of danger. I mean, one perfect example for me, right? It was only through therapy that I discovered that I'm actually an incredibly anxious person because when people describe anxiety to me, just didn't fit right with me, you know? Um, it just didn't sit right. But actually, what I am is very hypervigilant, and that's because of my experiences, whether that be trauma from being autistic or whether that be other traumas that autistic people experience at higher rates. It doesn't matter, but what that produces is hypervigilance. So that, and the thing is, being in that hypervigilant state and reading everything feels good to me because that's what I know. And it can be almost like a drug, you know. Um, so we really have to kind of, bring ourselves back in and like reconnect with our interoception, and it's really difficult. But yeah.
Yeah, and the things that, yeah, bringing it back round to, yeah, the monotropism and stuff, you said, like the things
Yeah.
that can really, really help us is, yeah, spending time with our interests and our sensory interests, not just maybe like topic based,
Yeah,
but,
like when we talk about interests, we
balancing
don't
our
just
topic.
mean researching and topics, but also the people that we're interested
Yeah,
in, the people that share opinions that we're interested in hearing about, the sensory interests.
community connections, like being able to communicate in
Mhm.
ways that feel right for you as well, like not necessarily going out to busy cafes or having to have those phone conversations, but having maybe text-based conversations work better for you. It's all those other ways of managing your kind of attentional resources to kind of help you balance your.
Yeah, and actually not being hard on yourself and expecting you to do all the things at once. I just small little wins. If you can find like a few minutes of a little anchor in a pocket to like have a bit of a sensory joy in and be in that flow state, then little wins turn into big wins, don't
Yeah.
they?
And generally, yeah, I think for autistic parents, like less is sometimes more. Generally,
Yeah.
when we're
And I
thinking
think
about
that's the moral of the
doing.
story, isn't it? With a meerkat mode and everything is less can be more. But we recognize that it can be really scary to like slow down a bit sometimes,
Yeah,
you know.
I think we both
Anyway.
find it hard to slow down, and yeah, and
Well, I mean,
this hour's
when
gone
we
very
talk
fast as
about
well, Tanya.
slowing down, we don't necessarily mean slow down in the neurotypical way. I think it's just more about that awareness that you bring into things, isn't it? And the awareness of like going, it's like catching things and going, oh, hang on a minute. I need to frame this in monotropic way. I need to frame this in how does this work for me, Not slowing down isn't stop going at 100 miles an hour. Um, Interestingly, before we wrap up, I had a really interesting meeting with a lecturer the other week because I'm looking at doing my social care degree because I'm thinking, oh, I've done it for long enough, I may as well tick the box. And I was asking them, if I do this, will I have time to maintain my charity work with AP UK as a trustee? Will I have time to do this? Will I have time to do that? And they were like, and it's a very neuronormative, yeah, but you will do too much. That will be too much. And I'm just like, I'm looking at this course and this is not going to be enough. And that's going to create a bigger problem for me than it being too much. Do you know what I mean? So we're constantly in that space where we're questioning. I'm like, oh my God, is this going to be too much? Do they know better than me? They're qualified. But I know me that I need a very high level of stimulation, but not too much stimulation to maintain any focus and interest. Because otherwise, that's going to be worse than being overloaded.
Just get in that flow state, right?
Yeah.
For you, and yeah, and for everybody, that flow state's going to look
Yeah,
quite
and
different.
it's trying different things out and finding where that perfect level of overstimulation and understimulation, I think being monotropic for me is probably a constant discovery of finding the perfect balance between overstimulation and understimulation. Like that's what we're trying to do. Um, and that's it really. Just that simple.
It's been lovely. Thank you very much. This is my first Facebook Live thing with Autistic Parents UK. So yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
Oh, we'll have to
It's
get you
been
back next year.
a nice chat. Thank you. And yeah, there's loads. I've dropped loads of resources into the chat here, about monotropism and various related subject matter.
Yeah. And if you want to find Helen, obviously you can find her on Facebook, Autistic Realms, and your website is autisticrealms.com.
AutisticRealms.com.
I didn't
Yeah,
know it was com or org, but it's monotropism.org and autisticrealms.com.
yeah,
And you write, you just, that's your flow state, isn't it? Just writing blogs and things.
yeah. It's a very monotropically themed website about monotropism,
Yeah. So, you know,
written and founded by a very monotropic person.
so if you want to go on a rabbit hole about monotropism, neuroqueer theory, burnout, anything really,
I've got a
Helen's
whole
web.
map of monotropism if people want to look into it. I've developed like
Oh
a whole kind of
yeah,
visual resource of how it feels and how it, yeah, how I
yeah.
feel
And I
in.
imagine that that map would be very useful for like autistic juniors and teens as well to start understanding their own monotropism.
Yeah, we've developed it with Stimpunks, and yeah, we've got quite a few free resources. We've got free training and all sorts on the Stimpunks website about the map of monotropic experiences. So
And
feel
all
free
of that can
to check
like
it
be
out.
found via your website as
My
well.
website, yeah, yeah, autisticrealms.com or Stimpunks, either one.
Brilliant. Wow.
Thank you very much.
That's all right. Thank you for coming. And I'm just going to stop the live stream now. So thank you everybody
Thank you
for
very much,
watching.
everybody.
Oh, and just briefly, so our next month's live, which will be advertised very shortly, will be with the lovely Bex Milgate, who runs our counselling project at AP UK. So Bex Milgate is an autistic parent, but also a therapist. And we're going to be talking about coping with Christmas, really, and the holiday seasons and all those demands and all that lovely stuff that we should really be looking forward to, but we're actually a little bit dreading as well. So that's going to be great.
Bex is super fabulous, so highly recommend that to join in there as well.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. See you later, guys.
Thank you. Bye.